session today about practical approach for lightweight threat modeling automation. The one question before we are starting, we have two options. I can run this presentation in Russian or English. What you prefer? Do we have someone don't speak Russian? Okay. Okay. So who here knows about what threat modeling is? Maybe have heard about it or using it as a part of your development lifecycle? Okay, all of you, great. So I'm going to provide you a brief overview of what threat modeling is and how we're doing threat modeling, why it's so important to have this process as part of our development lifecycle. We will talk about the problems we have as part of our in the DevOps and Agile era, and I will provide you a solution to how to integrate this process to the CI/CD pipeline. So we have a lot to cover, and I hope we have time to questions at the end. Okay, who I am? My name is Vitaliy Davidoff. I am Application Security Domain Lead at City Innovation Lab. I've been developer for many years and moved to the application security about six, 7 years ago. I've been responsible for secure software development lifecycle in the HP Enterprise. Just a disclaimer, so this presentation based on my experience to running threat modeling for the last 3-4 years and not related to processes and tools we have and we're using in the Citibank. So I know we are not on the security conference, so I wanted to provide you a kind of brief overview of the security terminology I'm going to use during my presentation, so we all will be on the same line. So what is asset? Asset is someone provides the value to our business. In our case, it might be our software code, it might be all the data we have as part of our application, credit card information, user-related data. It also might be our components like application server, web servers, databases, and so on. And the assets is something we should protect against threat. So the threat is any kind of event which can damage our assets. It might be threat on of the removing our data or unauthorized access to our data and so on. Vulnerability is kind of weakness inside our software which makes attack or exploit possible. So the attack is actually the act of the damage. It might be part of the hacker activities or some kind of malware, scripts, and so on. Abuse case. I think you're all aware of use cases. Use cases is actually our functionality. It's how our application behave. For example, we have use case for transfer amount of money from account A to account B. So what if I will transfer minus $100 from my account to account B? So what would be consequences? What do you think? Any guesses? Sorry? Yeah, actually the account B will charge and money transferred to my account, okay? Which is great, yes, but it's not by design. So it's abuse cases. What can go wrong in our design? Countermeasures or security controls is how can we protect our design. So maybe we should implement something as part of our software. Maybe we can, buy some external controls like web application firewalls or some kind of security gateways, etc. And the risk, so the role of application security and information security in general is to reduce the risk of threat will take over the assets. So in most cases, we want to reduce number of vulnerabilities we have in our software or reduce the criticality of those vulnerabilities. Yeah, it's kind of visual representation of this concept. So we have the assets, asset provide the value to our owner, our business, and we have threats. So threats can may potentially damage our asset, and through the exploitation of vulnerabilities, And then we have countermeasures, yes, which may reduce the risk to our assets. Okay, so back to our presentation. We have something we call software development lifecycle. It's the process, sequence of steps we should done in order to produce high quality software. So it might be 4 steps, 5 steps. It's based on methodologies we're using. In most cases, we have some kind of design, implementation, and verification, release step as the main part, and we have a lot of implementation of this concept, like waterfall, agile. So if we're using waterfall here, agile, some kind of hybrid solution, mixed, okay, great. So I'm not going to introduce the process, it's out of scope now, but in order to reduce security risk, we also should implement security activities as part of this process. And here you can see the examples like security planning, threat modeling, some kind of security coding, automation, release sign-off, and many, many others. And today we're going to talk about the threat modeling process. So what is threat modeling? Actually, it's structured process or framework, if you wish, provide us the way to identify all potential threats and abuse cases for our design. It also provides us the way to find and figure out all countermeasures we should implement. It also helps us to prioritize our features. For example, what we should fix and what gonna not to be fixed because it's not so risky. Again, there are many frameworks exist in the market from the Microsoft. We have also the Stride threat categorization framework from Microsoft. We have PASTA, is the attack simulation analysis for 7-step risk-centric methodology, VAST, Trike, many others from Micro Focus, from Synopsys, a lot of methodologies. So I'm not going to review these methodologies for now, but I just wanted to show you how we're doing threat modeling and why it's so important. So as the threat modeling process or exercise, we call it threat modeling exercise, we should answer on the 4 core questions. The first one is what we are building, or in the agile world, we're asking what are we working on for this in this sprint or for this feature. So it's kind of decomposition of our design. So we should understand what components we have, what kind of data we're going to manipulate, where we're going to store our data, and so on. The next question is what can go wrong? Yeah, so actually to find all threats, abuse cases we have. The next one is what are we going to do about that? So we need to think about how we can protect our system, what countermeasures we should implement, or maybe we need to buy something. And the last one is that did we do a good enough job? Is kind of a test for our process. So maybe we need to change our methodology, who we are involved in this process, and so on. Okay, and we're starting this create data flow diagram. If you've never seen DFD, so here's an example. We're trying to visualize all our design and place all the components. We have, for example, web servers, application server, and we have many others here. And we're also trying to define the trusted zone. So, for example, we didn't trust on the internet, but we have the trusted internal networking. And we have something in between. We call it DMZ. And we have maybe the legacy application here for the mainframe, for example. We also can create the process flow diagram or communication flow diagram in order to understand the protocols and how components communicate with each other. Okay, the next step will be actually to try and virtually attack our own system, okay, and act as a hackers. In this case, we're asking to think like a hacker, yes, but it's not so easy stuff. Yeah, we cannot just say, okay, you start think like a hacker. So how? So it's not obvious. So we should incorporate some techniques in order to start dialogue or start the process to asking questions. We can use Stride methodology from the Microsoft. It's kind of acronyms for spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privileges. We can use the property of these categories like authentication, integrity, confidentiality, availability, and so on. So back to our diagram. For example, at the point then we have requests from the browser to web server, we can start ask questions like, okay, can I intercept the request and see all the data, or to see the passwords, or maybe I can disable availability for web server, or can I access credentials store without authentication, etc., etc. So I'm just going through the stride definition and start asking questions. Then the next step will be to find about countermeasures. So how can I protect my system? For example, I can introduce HTTPS, so a secure channel, and using HTTPS protocol. I can set up the cluster for web servers in order to reduce the availability issue. Or I can provide the token-based access control for credential store, and so on. And the next step will be actually to think about, so in addition, I also can think about how can I test my system. So what kind of test I should run for my design. For example, what kind of static analysis tool I should implement, dynamic, composition analysis, etc. So what the benefits of this process? So first of all, we have the map, all assets we have, all the components, and we have list of all threads and abuse cases we have. We also have the list of countermeasures, so what we should implement in order to protect our design. We can use output from threat modeling as an input to penetration testing process and many, many others. So actually we have everything we need in order to protect our design. So it's kind of very important process. So what if we don't have threat modeling in place? Then we lean on something we call intuitive security. Intuitive security might be based on the best practices of some technology restriction we have in our organization, but in some cases we can miss threats, or we can concentrate on the wrong threats. Just an example, what do you think? What is the deadliest American animal? American animal, yeah, the deadliest American animal. It might be dog, snake, shark, deer. So what do you think? Well, who else? Shark, maybe shark, no? Dog? Okay, yeah, so you're correct, the deer is the most danger, but we even don't have the second place in the list. Yeah, so we missed it. And the dog on the third place. So the same actually is sometimes correct for their security. So we can miss something, or we think about the wrong threat as the main one. Okay, so when we're doing threat modeling as part of our development lifecycle, as a rule of thumb, as early as possible. I think you're all aware, or you're aware of this diagram, yes? So it's very cheaper to fix something here in the design phase, in the code phase, and very expensive in the production. Yeah, so it's obvious. So I used to say that we need around threat modeling exercise in the design phase, but in Agile we have, the borders are blurred between design and implementation. So I would say we need to do that as part, at any point on feature onboarding process. Well, the next point, we can do threat modeling as part of the post-mortem activity. It's after the accident has occurred, in order to understand why we missed something and maybe correct our process. In some cases, we're also running threat modeling on the legacy application. Okay, responsibilities. For now, security specialist responsible for threat modeling, because you have to have the solid knowledge of how to attack system, and how to find attack vectors and all abuse cases. Developers and architects, in most cases, they don't have this expertise to do that. But we have the problem here because security specialists, they don't scale enough. Yes, we have approximately one security expert for 100, maybe 200 developers. And we should run threat modeling for every feature we have and for every design change we have. We don't have time to do that. So we want to move threat modeling to the developers. And not just because they can save you time, but also because they know the product much better than security experts. But again, they are not security experts, and we should offer them different process or different way to do that. Okay, the common problems, the first of all, it's a manual process. It takes a lot of time. Sometimes it might be even days and weeks to run threat modeling exercise. And just think about it. So we have, for example, 2 weeks sprint, and we spend 4 days for threat modeling. So it's not suitable for agile development. And that's in the manual process, yes, so it's not so suitable for CI/CD pipeline too. And it requires security professionals in place. It's not scalable, so we have a lot of problems here. But it's kind of very important, threat modeling. So we want to have threat modeling as part of our process and part of our pipeline. So what can we do in this? Okay, so DevOps introduced us an automation as a solution to deal with timing problems. So we have scripts as a code which uses some kind of recipes provided by YAML file or JSON file in order to automate our processes. So we actually have everything as a code now. We have continuous integration as a code, orchestration as a code, cloud deployment as a code, and we want also have the security as a code. And not only for security testing, but also for threat modeling and penetration testing and so on. So what would be requirements to lightweight threat modeling as a code, and why we call it lightweight, actually? So we can automate something we know. We cannot automate something we don't know. And we learned that we actually can predict threats and abuse cases approximately about the 75–80% of web systems, yes, at least for web systems. We call it automation part on the easy stuff, yes? And we want to move this part, the easy part, to the developers, because we still need someone to answer design question and create the diagrams. So it's kind of semi-automation process. We call it lightweight threat modeling. And we need to run this process for every new feature we have and any change in our design. But we always have features or flaws we've never seen before. So we need, to start do the manual process as we used to be, and run, using whiteboards and brainstorming process and so on. But now we have time to do that because we automated the main part of our features and our flows, and now we have time to do that. We have time to manual process. We call it just enough threat modeling, okay? And we also want to manage the threat modeling versions. So if we have change, we generate the new YAML file. So and we talk about the YAML files here. So we also want to create the YAML file as an output from this process. So we can use it in our CI/CD process. So the first step for this approach will be to generate patterns or templates for all known parts we have in our system. So here's an example. In a JSON format, you can use XML format or any other structured format document. So, and we have, for example, a list of threads and all the countermeasures for flow called username and password authentication. So we actually have everything we need predefined for this flow, okay? And we're going to generate such patterns for all the known parts in our system. We can generate it, so we can create it by ourselves. We can use predefined libraries, open source libraries. We can use commercial tools, so it's up to you. And this part will be on the security specialist effort. So it's one-time effort. it's not really one-time effort because we need to maintain patterns if something changed or add new threads or maybe remove threads, etc. But it's not so big effort then. And now we want to move pattern selection part to the developers, okay, as part of the feature onboarding. So we can do it, we have different ways to provide here. For example, the questionnaire, they just check the answer, for example, yes, no answer, and we automatically select the pattern from our list. The same one is for the designers, so then our developer will drag and drop new component or create the connectivity between components. They automatically can generate or pick appropriate patterns here, as you can see on the right side. Okay, so now, just one note about the questionnaire. If you create your own questionnaire, please be careful not asking the questions related to the security or using security terminology as part of the questions. Because if you're asking about dictionary attack as for your username and password authentication, from the developer's point of view, it might be something like that. Yeah? So, but from the security, no. Security is kind of password enumeration attack. So please use the plain design questions and developers language. Okay, the next step, actually we have the list of all patterns for our design. Now we can generate YAML file. So this YAML file contains everything we need. We can split it for different parts. For example, YAML file for test scenarios, YAML file for abuse cases, if we have different automation tools. And we can enrich YAML files with some more details, for example, severity here, or these pointers for known risk databases like CWE, like OWASP Top 10, etc., etc. Just keep it in mind. I will show you how we can use it later. So now, we have patterns we provided to developers, so we selected patterns, we have YAML file. Now we can use YAML file in order to automate different processes in our pipeline. For example, risk-based security test orchestration. Okay, so what is it? We can incorporate some kind of security orchestration tool here. It might be open source or any commercial tools, it's up to you. And we seed as an input our YAML file, provides all the tests we should run for our design. So the orchestration tool will generate, so they set up an environment and run all the security test tools we need, and produce the reports. Then we can use reports on any gates in our pipeline. Also, we have the new process called continuous feedback and optimization here. So what is it? If we found something in a later stage, for example, in production and in pre-production testing, we can automatically correct our YAML file based on the new issues. For example, we found something in production, we can send an email to security people, okay, guys, listen, we're going to add new pattern to your YAML file because we found something. We have new issues. Please review, okay? But in most cases, we can do it automatically. We don't need any people interaction here. The one of examples of how can we integrate this process into the CI/CD pipeline. For example, we can introduce security test step as part of the build stage. And this step will trigger the pull YAML file from our repository, from GitHub or Bitbucket. It's up to you. Insert it as part of the, as a seed to our orchestration framework. Orchestration framework will set up environment, run test, and produce reports, okay? Then if you have continuous deployment, for example, as part of your pipeline, we can also introduce a go, no-go decision based on the threat modeling coverage. So how this works? As you know, the reporting tools provides some kind of coverage metrics here, for example, for known risk databases for CWE, for OWASP, for GDPR, PCI, etc., etc. Remember the labels we have in the YAML file for each threat we have. So we can take our YAML file and labels we have in the YAML file and what produced by report. So they correlate it and calculate coverage for threat modeling. And we can use it as part of the go, no go decision now in our CD. So by the way, it's a real snapshot from one of the security tools. So a kind of summary or main concept. So the first of all, we're going to generate patterns for all known parts in our system. We can move this pattern selection part to the developers now. Then we can now automate different security processes like risk-based test automation based on the YAML file. But the most important part here is we still manage all the process by the security specialist. Things to worry about or some kind of limitations, I would say. So first of all, we don't have single framework to cover all this process end to end. So we have tools to provide us a way to generate patterns and select patterns, as you've seen in the previous slides. And we have tools for test orchestrations. And we have tools for pipeline management. But we don't have one framework combine all the tools in one place. I know that at least 2 big vendors now in process, so to create such framework. I hope next year we will see some kind of holistic solution for end-to-end security automation. The next one is we don't have specifications for security automation. So all YAML files or JSON files up to you. So it's not, we don't have any official specification for YAML formats and JSON formats. The last point, as I said, sometimes we have the manual threat modeling process for the hard stuff or for non-automation part. But the output of this process should be also new YAML file generation and the new patterns. So the next time it will be part of the known part. So here's just an example of tool set you can use for this approach. For example, you can use threat modeler as the designer part, or Irius risk for patterns for questionnaire implementation. You can Zero North as the test orchestration tools and many others. So it's just an example. You can pick your favorites, but you can use the different tools for this. I think we have questions, time to questions. So if you have, yeah.
But nowadays, we should understand that most of the projects works with microservices, and as I understand, if we will have more microservices in our project, we will have much more security complexity of security, and all these models will not work very efficiently.
I would say the opposite is correct, because if you have the small part, it's the easy for you to understand the security issues. If you have the big monolith application, it's much more problematic for you. So if you have the small part,
so it's easier to secure a small part.
Yeah, and you're going to generate YAML file per use service. Mm-hmm. So if you have service, it's actually the part of the scope. So I'm just keep the scope.
But,
the scope is very important here, because you can define that you are working for feature or for service, for microservice. So it's basically it's based on how you build your pipeline, actually. So what the units you're working with. You work on the services, you work on the feature, user stories.
Mm-hmm. But under complexity, I meant that I will need more security specialists to cover all the small parts than to cover just...
No, it's not. Yeah, okay, I understand what I'm talking about. The known parts, what I mean, that you have predefined issues for all web applications, for example. So you have library, these patterns, for all web applications in general.
In general.
Okay? You need to correct something. Yes, you need to provide your criticality for each pattern, for example, because in your scenario it might be very critical, in different scenarios maybe not, but it's the same threads. The same threads, and you have predefined threads. Then you have the manual part, so for flow you never seen before, yeah, so something very new technology, for example. Then you need provide somehow them to generate the new patterns from this process. So the next time it's shifted to the known parts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Somebody else?
As a security specialist, could you please briefly evaluate applicability of SonarQube or Veracode as a tools for threat modeling?
I'm trying to be the tools independently. So I don't want to to overview the tools now, but the concept here,
whether they are applicable or you just have no insight.
No, it's applicable based on what you want to do. If it's static analysis or dynamic analysis, or you have suites. For example, Veracode provides you the suite in the static and dynamic and mobile application testing and composition analysis tools. But the question is what you need. So how are you going to choose what the tools you should use for your design? So now you can do it based on the risk assessment on the threat modeling process, because after you have the patterns, as part of the pattern, you have the tools. For example, you need to run static analysis tool for this threat, or composition analysis tool because you have, for example, threat for using vulnerable third-party packages in your code. It's threat, it's predefined threads, you have pattern for this, and as a security tool, you define the composition analysis. Okay, that's the way to choose the tools, and maybe you need to specify specific tools. For example, if you have static analysis, but your feature, you have a lot of, for example, cryptography or encryption operation as part of your feature. So you generate keys or tokens based on username, password, etc. So the regular tools, so the check marks and similar, they will cover about 40% or 50%. So you need something specific tool, specific static analysis tool like CryptoSense, for example. So they will cover 80% or 90% of all crypto-related features as a static tools. Okay, so they can vary what tools you're going to use.
So the takeaway is that nothing fits all, right?
Sorry?
Nothing fits all.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
We need to use suits of different
you need to understand. Yes, but you need to.
Yes,
but you need to wait to choose. You need to wait to understand what you need. Yeah.
Thank you.
Somebody else? Hi, so we are going to deploy our service to a new region. Does it make sense to show it on thread modeling diagrams? So are any threads possible at all if you want to go to a new region?
A region in a cloud system.
Sorry?
Region in a cloud system for Amazon, for example. Yes, Amazon.
Yeah,
region?
yeah. For example.
Yeah. So we have So we have tools for that. So for example, a threat modeler will cover this issue. So then you can define, okay, the zones, the regions, the zones, the trusted zones, etc. And based, for example, if you have the region but you have different VPNs, for example, it will automatically create the new threads.
So okay, such action as deployment to a new region can be potentially interesting for security specialists, right? So it makes sense to create a security review and reflect somehow right?
Let me back.
Yeah, you had a slide that you
Yeah,
said
this
that-
one. This one. Okay, this one is actually the example from Threat Modeler.
Mhm.
Okay, they provide the way to to automatically generate patterns and threads for cloud environments, for Amazon, for example, for Google, etc. So what you need from the developer point of view, you know your system, you know so how you're going to design your system. You just need to create the correct design for your account. So what the components you have and how they communicate, etc. It is automatically generate the patterns for you and threads.
Okay.
So this part covered by many tools, I would say. So this is not the problem. The problem is how to connect all the parts together. For example, we need script, for example, some kind of script which will take the output, all the patterns generated by the threat modeler or by Irius risk on the left side, and generate YAML file. We don't have this solution for now. And then we need another script to take this YAML file and insert into the orchestration framework. So this is the glue. So that's kind of how we communicate all the tools in one place.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Somebody more?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your speech. It's a really important topic, and I want to ask a question about if we're talking about outsourcing. The basic concept is to provide penetration testing at the final stage of a product development for external vendor. And if we're talking about threat modeling, we should make persistent security specialist in the team, or this is responsible for DevOps?
So I want just to be sure that I understand. So you're talking about the penetration testing testing group or security group in general?
If we're talking about general security.
General security. Not necessarily so, because actually you need only the security specialist to generate you the plan for this, and you need someone to correct the patterns if need, to customize your patterns based on your features, based on your flow, and that's it. So that you don't need more than that, and you can use the YAML file, so the part of YAML file abuse cases, as an input to penetration testing too, because they're also using some kind of automation tools to run pen testing. So you can now automate this process from your threat modeling and not as a general.
Okay, thank you.
Else?
Okay.
No questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So here are my, here's my details, so you can send me an email if you need more details about this process and how it works.
В 3 часа будет панельная дискуссия. Кого интересует тема security, будет Евгений Пеленкевич, Cosec Labs.